Are you curious about how angels and spirit guides surround you and are here to support you? How synchronicities, or what we often call coincidences, are meaningful signs from the universe? If these questions are compelling to you, listen in as angel channel and medium Valerie Wood shares wisdom and knowledge that comes from working with clients for over 20 years. I'm excited for you to learn how connecting with your spiritual guidance team can bring you comfort and peace in your life. Let's dive into the episode. Welcome back to Mystical Sisterhood. This is your host, Maureen Spielman, and I am here once again with Valerie Wood. Valerie was first here in episode 5, so very early on. I've known her for years. That episode was called In the Realm of Your Spirit Guides and Angels. And then just a few months ago, she was joined on episode 64 by our friends and colleagues, Heather Hansen and Alicia Isaacs-Howes. And that one we called Mystical Sisterhood Roundtable. And it talked about spirituality, collaboration, and trust. And both of those episodes, episode 5 and episode 64, are must listen to. You can start with today's with Valerie because we're going to kind of get back into her work. But Valerie, first and foremost, welcome. I'm so happy to have you back.
Thank you. You know, I love being here. So it's an honor. It's always so much fun.
Yeah.
Being with my sister.
Yes. And for the listeners, Valerie and I were both born in the year of the rooster, so we often refer to one another as rooster sisters. So if you don't know your Chinese zodiac animal, look it up and see if you're one of us.
Yeah, exactly. You probably have more sisters out there.
Yes, no matter what you are, you're welcome here. So, Valerie, I know you've been getting into some new work, but I really wanted to just start with the basics because let's say this is the first time that a listener is meeting you. I didn't say it yet, but you are an angel channeler, a medium, and say a little bit more about your work and the work that you've been doing for, I think, decades now.
I've been doing this for over 20 years. So I always tell people who are new that one of the things I started off as an angel channeler. So I was doing trance channel with Archangel Michael. And then from there, it just grew into more mediumship work. And so I have some clients that come to me. We just strictly work with their own angels and guides. So whether it's Archangel Michael, the other archangels, or this part that I actually love is their own personal angels and guides, which I think is very wonderful because then it gets personal to them. And a lot of times people don't always know who their own personal angels and guides are. And so then I always tell them that if they're coming to see me and working with their angels, whoever their angels or guides are that are showing up for them in that session is a direct reflection of who they are as a person and as a spirit, or they would not be connected with that person. So if you have somebody who's very good with numbers, most likely they'll have somebody showing up who likes numbers to help them with that. If you have somebody who is very empathic, a lot of my clients are very intuitive, very empathic, so sensitive. And so they usually have the nurturing angel, or if they like Mother Earth, those people usually have people who come and they're like very earthy angels. And I'll see them with like twigs in their hair and flowers. And so it's a direct representation. And a lot of people don't realize that they have those connections, personal connections to their angels. And so it's kind of nice to know who's on the other side. And then I have a whole other set of clients who's been really popular in the last probably 5 years or more, even before COVID, with mediumship work. And so their loved ones are welcome to come through. And then I always tell those, because the mediumship people who seem to find me usually don't know I work with angels. That's how I started. Yeah. And so I always say, I'm just giving you a heads up. If you're here for a loved one, they can come through, but your angels may come through as well. So I kind of find a lot of times when we're doing mediumship work, it is a crossover between the two. And then they just both come through at the same time, because whether it's a loved ones or your angels, they just want you to know that they're okay. They're there to support you in every way. So
can you differentiate for a newer listener? Is there a difference between a spirit guide and an angel?
Yes, that's a great question. So I always say angels have never been human. They can take on human form. Okay. So a lot of times, you may read books or stories about someone was here as a helper. Someone helped me, and then all of a sudden they turn around and they're gone. Like they're magically appeared and they're disappeared. So angels can take on human form, but that's just temporary and they've never been human. So your guides have been human before, had some lifetime experience. So you have probably known them on the other side. You've known them on the other side. So they're probably family, friends that you're
Wow.
not consciously aware of, or you've had other past lives with them that are coming through. And whatever gifts that they share or whatever connection you have with them, you've agreed before you came in here. They'll say, hey, I need your help with, A,
Wow.
B, and C. And then your friend will say, okay, well, I'll be your guide in this lifetime to help you through. So lovely. We have angels, guides, loved ones. We have a whole slew of people to support us. So,
Oh, that's so beautiful. It's so comforting.
yeah.
Often, when someone does an individual reading with you, they might walk away with maybe even a named angel or a presence. And do you find if they come back as a repeat client that then they begin to have a relationship with the angel or guide?
That is actually my goal. I
Mm,
always say
hmm.
you are more connected to your angel or guide or loved ones than I am. I'm just the medium, the bridge, and the moment. And so my goal is for you, if you didn't know your angel or guide, to make an introduction and to say, I'm hearing like Matilda. I think someone's guide was angel was Matilda, right? So it's like Matilda's here. This is who she is. This is the energy she represents, and this is how she's helping you.
Hmm.
So call on her and start to develop that connection, your own personal relationship with them. And I love that
Yeah.
when people do come back and just say, I've been seeing signs from Matilda, or I'm hearing things,
Yeah.
or I'm getting information. That's really part of one of my goals is to make a connection because you're more connected to them than I am. You just don't know it yet.
Right, right. And so, okay, let's say I go and I discover a guide or an angel I didn't know who was here supporting me pretty much 24/7. Then,
Mhm.
if I am aware and have the intention of connecting, then is it true that they're just always there for me and that I can lean into them? And how would I? How would I kind of lean into them and utilize them to support me just in a regular day?
That's a great question. So you can use them in a general sense, just help me to be calm, comfort. I just want to not have less anxiety in a general sense. But I think the better you understand who your angels are, the better you utilize them. It's almost like if a person you have the numbers angel and you're the empathy angel. If you're working on data, collecting data, or you're doing the bills, you're probably not calling on the empathy angels. It's always saying, oh, this is too much, emotions and grief, or I'm a little like nervous. I don't look at those numbers. You're probably not going to want to call in your
Yeah.
empathy angel. You're going to want to call in your numbers angel to collect that. So I think it's
Yeah.
useful to know, well, who are they? And if you're the earthy angel and your earthy angel, you're just feeling like this whisper or this pull to get outside, connect, take a walk in nature. Or a lot of people like
Mm,
water,
mhm.
being around. I always say people who love water have water angels that I just call them water angels.
Yeah.
So you may have a need to call on the water angels, and water angels is just soothing you, replenish you, recharging you. So the more you know specifically what
That's
your
neat.
particular angel does, then it easier it
Yeah.
becomes to call on them for what you want. So like Archangel Michael, everyone knows he's like the protector energy. He dispels fear. He has his sword. I use
Mm.
Michael for parking spaces. So I don't just use Michael to like for protection and so forth, but I will say, hey, I know he's always with me. It's really crowded. Give me that parking space, please. So you can use each angel for anything general, but it does help when you're very specific and you
Mm.
know what they're there for. So
I love that. And it reminds me of, when I think about the podcast Mystical Sisterhood and sort of the topics that have come forth, they do span more topics like today, where we're talking about mediumship channeling, to, the Akashic records, to soon I'm going to interview someone on human design. So, sort of these different kind of modalities to access more information that is there for us. And then there's all sorts of episodes on connection to self and just personal growth issues. So I kind of
mhm.
think like it's a bridge between the human world and then this whole spirit world that we didn't really ever learn in this way that we're having the conversation, but it is a conduit or a portal for us to become more inner resourced, because we know in life that life is challenging. We're here on earth where, things come up that are difficult for us. And it's not just like, oh, Valerie's here talking about angels and spirit guides and go get a deck of angel guide. It's not just fluff. It is here for us. This is your profession. This is what you do. And so think of it, and you can add to this, but for the listener, think of it as just this real invisible, intangible resource that we have that's here for us to guide us and to help us along this path of life.
Well
Yeah.
said, Maureen. I'm hearing we all believe in love. We know love exists. It's not physical like my cup here, even though it may be physical in a hug or pat on the back or with words and so forth. But the essence of love exists, and everybody believes in that or knows that. And it's always there for you. And whether we know it, feel it, or not, we have this connection to connect into it. This is the same thing with your angels and guides. That's who they are. That's where they come from. They literally are the essence of that love, of that intangible. And they're there to support you, but in a very real way. And I think, I think they should teach these things more often. And just, as kids come up in schools, I understand everyone has different backgrounds and, we want to respect that and so forth. But I think it's so important for you to have that, that resource, like you said, the inner resource. We all have our internal resource, and we all have our own team, posse, whatever you want to call it, on the other side. I said, use them? Use them. They're there to help you. Need to use them.
Yeah, I like that. And I think for the even listening to you, it's like the offerings that are being made across the podcast. This is just one of them, and use it. It's here for you. I wanted you to kind of address something for us. Okay, so we were all conditioned that we were born into this life, and we took a human body. So I kind of want to take a look at that, because we are not only a human body, and we have heard forever the trilogy of mind, body, spirit. But how do you think of us people living on earth? Like, what are we made up of? It's the human body, and then the spirit and the soul. And why would we even take a body on earth? What's this all about?
I don't know if anyone actually knows for certain. Everybody has their ideas about what that means. I'll start with the human body. I look at it as this is just my container, because we're on earth. Okay. It has the qualities of earth. You have to have matter on earth. And so in order for our spirit to exist on earth, we have to be contained in something that's matter. And so I look at this human body as a container to hold our spirit in order so that we can explore all the possibilities that earth has to offer us and all the interactions with other people. And so some people, it's a train of thought, we come here to grow and learn, which I kind of believe that. But I also feel like people come here just to experience, things. So I don't think there's I don't think we absolutely 100% know. We have a lot of people who have crossed over who will say we come and I learned this growth, and I hear that a lot from the other side. I was here and I learned A, B, and C, and I was growing and so forth. But I think, I think it's so personal. We live personally. So I think every experience and why we come here and why we want to be in this container is going to be so unique, your own blueprint, your own unique design of why you're coming here. And I'm sure it's just not for one reason. It's probably multiple reasons. So that's what I suspect.
That's so okay. So then thank you for that. And what do you think about, so when we connect, when you are that conduit, where you're the medium and the channeler between the messages coming in for a person who sits with you, are they speaking? I don't even know if this is a valid question, but are they speaking to us as a human, or are they speaking to our soul? Is there, like, how do you see that?
Yeah. So I would say both. So people always ask me, how does that work? How do you know you're connecting to them? I always say that because you're a spirit in this human body, this container, the easiest way for spirit, angel guides, and loved ones to communicate with you is through this body. So all of your senses. So whatever you see, you hear, you feel, you know, you smell. And so it's really interesting. I think the most confusing one for people, maybe there's two of them. Sight is pretty easy. You can see something external. You get a sign of like the cardinals. You see, oh, that's my mother, or that's my father, or you see coins. Like that's a common one. So I'm just saying that. Or you get up, in your mind's eye, your father, your mother pops up. And so sight is pretty easy. What people kind of get confused on is hearing or this knowingness. And when I say, people say you hear them, and I would say it's not Archangel Michael's sounding voice. It is my own voice. So it's me. You know how when we talk in your head, at least I talk in my head, right? And we're talking sometimes in our head. And so you're hearing this, but what happens is that when you start to pay attention and discern, it will just come randomly and you'll think, oh, I didn't think that. I heard that was a great idea. Where did that come in? Or they use different tones or different words that you don't use when you're talking to yourself. So that's another one. People who are very logical, they have a lot of downloaded thoughts. So they just say, I just had that thought. It just came to me. But of course, it's in their own thinking, their own voice. And so they don't realize, well, that's just their angels or loved ones, like whispering, like, hey, you should do this. So, I would say pay attention to that.
Okay. Great things to pay attention to. It's exciting for me to have this conversation. And because one of the things we talked about discussing today was those signs that you're getting through the senses and synchronicities. And I'll name that you and I went to record this podcast about 10 days ago or something like that, or 2 weeks ago. And the whole time we were together, I was hearing on my earphones music, and I was saying, Valerie, do you hear that music? And you were saying, I don't know what you're talking about. And then you thought like, oh, there's how did you describe it? Like you said, like the spirits and angels are here with us. Like they've got a lot to say. And so then I always listen to the podcast in full before I okay it to go to press. And I was listening to it and it was the first time where I thought the way that I was showing up was a little bit incongruent or not in alignment with me and just the way I had wanted to show up. But then I really think that all of that interference that day was there for a reason. And then when I approached you and explained the situation, Valerie, do you mind re-recording? I think you got some of the same feeling that day.
I did. Absolutely. It's just, when something feels a little off. And it was funny because you kept saying that through the whole thing. Do you hear that? And then we would talk and then you hear them like, I'm not hearing anything. It was almost as if this isn't the time or day to do this. We're going to run interference. You're both. Me too. It felt a little disjointed. Like, and normally, you're my rooster sister. We always have a great time talking. And it was just like, what's happening here? What are you asking me? What am I going to say? So I think
funny. I know.
Spirit was interrupting us and just saying that is not the time or day to talk about what you're going to talk about.
Well, it was funny because I had a lot of interference. I think I had 2 podcast recordings in that day, and both of them I had a different kind of disruption. And for me, a lesson in it was, this is a funny thing, but the byproduct lesson for me was going to you with my truth. And, when I was young, I had a issue like with going to people and saying like, oh, this is what's happening. I didn't want you to be disappointed. I knew you wouldn't be, but the old feelings came up for me of, well, how am I going to tell Valerie? Even though, like I'm saying, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was there for me to work with. And then I was able to go back with you. And I said, she's going to accept this completely. And then I got to practice saying, hey, can we do a do-over? Which the whole do-over in life across domains is just a really important thing. So it was, they sent signs that day and it allowed me to grow through. So that I'm grateful for it. And today we get to sit down and do it the way we wanted to do it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just did something that my teachers have said to me, my living teachers and teachers that have crossed over have said to me, pay attention. You were really
Mm-hmm.
paying attention. And Maureen, you are just one of those people who are okay with sometimes being uncomfortable. And I always say this to people, if you're going to dive into this work, even just to know your angels, sometimes it's going to get a little uncomfortable and you're going to have to be okay with getting uncomfortable or just not
Mm-hmm.
knowing. And so, but once you do that, I think that in itself, as you said, is the lesson to help you grow and get really comfortable. And people just want you to be authentic, and being authentic means that, hey, that one wasn't the greatest. That wasn't my best work. I can tell you that. So when you
Yeah.
said that, I was like, oh, yes, let's grab that one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's part of it, being able to be authentic and showing up for yourself and giving yourself permission. And isn't it wonderful that your angels and guides ran that interference and it gave you an opportunity to be authentic and show up for you?
Yes.
And I'm
Yep.
hearing them say you didn't even apologize. Like you don't, it wasn't like you
Mm-hmm.
didn't even need to apologize. But as women, we have a tendency to say, I'm sorry. And I actually said that to my
Mm-hmm.
husband a while ago. I said, somebody says something. He said it to me. He was listening to a Julia Louise Dreyfus podcast, and he was like, you know what? She said women always say sorry for everything. And he goes, you know what? That's
Yeah.
true. Men don't. Men don't. So it was such a
Mm-hmm.
lesson in that sense that I'm so sorry, but you don't have to be sorry. It's just, this just isn't right for me. And you
Right.
showed
Yes.
up, you were uncomfortable. And I was like, thank God she said that because you showed up. And I'm like, yeah, that wasn't
Yeah.
my best stuff either. So thank you for
Yeah.
being authentic with
Yes.
you
Yes.
and being uncomfortable.
And thanks for that. Yeah. And thank you for the reflection back and the noticing, because again, across all of this work that's being presented through the podcast is women
Yeah.
stepping into a new paradigm. And so even
Mhm.
when we discuss that right now, it's a,
Yes.
a sign that that's something you can watch out for. You don't need to say, I'm sorry. And yeah, I'm
No.
thinking about too, we were going to talk a little bit today about the beautiful world of synchronicities. So here you are as the angel channel and medium, then you meet with your clients and they come through you to assist the individual with whatever questions they may have or whatever you're getting. And
Mhm.
then also another way that the beautiful guides come through us is synchronicities. And how do you define synchronicities? And do you think that there's something that's in front of us all the time that we may not always notice?
Yes. So I would say synchronicity is anything that keeps you in alignment with yourself or brings you back to
Mm,
your path.
yeah. Ooh, I like
That's one
that.
of those moments
Uh-huh.
you're like, oh, that's weird. When you get those chills, that's weird. Why was I thinking this? And then all of a sudden I get that phone call, or whatever it is. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe, people say coincidences. I don't believe that there's any coincidences.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, Maureen. There's always synchronicities. I think they're always there for us. I don't think we've been trained to see them all. And we're human and we're not always paying attention because we have other human distractions. And so I think if we can
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to the synchronicities or the signs, how they show up, and pay attention to things that are, oh, that's weird, that's strange. Gives me a pause. Then
Mm-hmm.
our life can be a little bit easier, or at least it
Mm-hmm.
can show up for you
I,
in a way that it hasn't shown up for you before. That's how your angels and guides and loved ones communicate with you. So
mm-hmm.
science and synchronicities go hand in hand because you can ask a question and then all of a sudden you see this big sign. You're like, huh, I was just asking that. That's weird.
Yes. It's so good. I feel like the two things that have come to me in the last like 5 minutes are that when we begin to practice and have these conversations and realize that there's so much out there for us, that we begin to normalize it. And so things that were almost marginalized before then
Yeah.
become normalized. And I want to just go back for a second and go back to your remark on showing up as in our authentic selves. Maybe this work is not for everybody, but
Yeah.
if it's a conversation that comes back into your world again and again, or there's something about it that alerts it, perhaps it's part of your authentic self. And I was going to say, when I go to you for a personal session, I love it. And I met you, I think, 8 years ago. And then for a while, I was going a little more frequent. But these days, like, I kind of keep it on track as almost like a gift to myself every 6 months. And so I want to do one soon, a call with you. But I'll tell people, I feel like a session when the messages come through you, and then this mix of guidance you give, reflection, guidance, it's really, to me, as valuable as a therapy session it's like a coaching session to me. And people will be like, "You're crazy, Maureen," but that's what I feel, and I'm going to say that, and I'm going to put that out there, and do with it what you want. But
Yeah.
that's my truth, and we can start naming our truth. And that's why I love that Mystical Sisterhood has been so far like a kind of like a potpourri, because who doesn't like potpourri? But it gives us a chance to choose which parts are ours, and only some of them are going to be.
That's so true. That's so funny because I hear those. You're not alone. I hear the same thing from client. You are better than my therapist. And I always joke, I'm like, I'm not a therapist, but it is therapy.
Yeah. Because
Or
it's
you're like,
soothing. Yeah.
it's soothing. And so it is. I
Mm-hmm.
just heard this recently. You're like a therapist. You're like a life coach. You're the medium who get, soothing,
Mm-hmm.
comfort, joy, happiness, health, whatever, unresolved issues, all of these things, angel. And so what they don't always know is that what happens when you're connecting with the angels or your loved ones, and especially when it's intentional. So whether you come for a reading with me, whether you do it on your own, because again, you have more of a connection to them than I do, so your
Mm-hmm.
connection is really stronger, but sometimes we need outside help. We all do, because I
Yes.
always say it takes a spiritual village, even for me. And so what
Mm-hmm.
happens is
It's good.
that when you make that time and space to connect, there's also this energetic exchange that's happening between me, you, and them. And when you're
Mm-hmm.
connected with the energy of that love or that hope or giving you like the resilience, I'm hearing the word gumption. I think I had that years ago for a client. She's like, gumption. That's not a word you always hear. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever energy that your angels and guides know that you need, they're literally infusing that energy with you, and then it stays with you. And I hear that even afterwards, especially like a week or two afterwards, that I'm still feeling like on a high, like I'm still feeling so connected. And it's, obviously the words are important, and it makes a difference to hear that. So it does. But what a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't know
Mm-hmm.
is it's always everything's energy. So it's an energy exchange. And so
Ooh,
their
nice.
love and whatever they want to infuse with you that they know that you need in the moment connects to your own personal energy, your energy
Beautiful.
field.
Mm-hmm.
And you take that with you. And then, you feel like, wow, that was like the best therapy session, or I just had some
Yeah.
coaching, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that whatever that was. So you get what you
Yeah.
need.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think people would know that. I don't think that they would
No.
expect, oh, I'm going to go meet with Valerie, the angel channeler medium, and I'm going to have takeaways that I can practically take into my life. I know that you also have, through your work and your learning through all the years, you understand some of the process of what happens to us. That's why I was asking some, like, who are we? We're this soul in a human body, but the
Mm-hmm.
process that an individual goes through when they approach the end of their life. And I wanted to share a little bit of your work around this with the listener, just because I think it could be incredibly beneficial, and it's a sensitive topic. But also, again, seeking to normalize questions about when we cross over, when we leave this earthly plane, and what happens to us. And I think I have to say too, often one of the truths of life that I hear is that one of the only things we know is that we're going to die. And so you became interested in supporting individuals around facing the loss of a loved one,
Yeah.
perhaps facing dying themselves, or those who
Mm-hmm.
have lost somebody. So what do you
Mm-hmm.
see as your role in that, and how did that work come to you?
So I did angel work, which is love, bringing connection to that.
Mm,
And then it just naturally went into mediumship work. And
mhm,
so from there, through mediumship work, it was people just coming and helping loved ones cross over. So, or wanting to know about their loved ones, so what they were doing, how do they communicate me? You know, they're very curious, or their loved ones have crossed over an accident, you know, and they don't get to say
mhm,
goodbye. So it's, you know, are they okay? Did they suffer? So I was seeing these general conversations from both sides. It was very interesting. Those on this side would be saying similar things, and those us here would be asking the same questions. And then I had a great, wonderful, I'm so grateful opportunity connect to somebody who has terminal cancer. And she was so brave and courageous and was able to bring all of these questions that you probably are not very comfortable sitting with and talking to your own family. And it was, you know, it was wonderful because connecting with her grandmother and all of my other family and friends, or her family and friends, and just answering all these wonderful questions that she probably
mhm.
didn't have access to. And so it was such a beautiful way. So really my goal is to support both sides, is to anybody who's transitioning, let's have those conversations. You know, what do you want to know?
Yeah.
You get questions, who's going to be waiting for me? Am I going to have to be with people that I don't like on the other side? You know, you don't think of
Mhm,
those things. Ooh, am I going to have to see
mhm.
so and so? I didn't like him here.
Yeah.
You know, or
Right.
or really heavy duty things. I have to, you know, and this one's really hard. And I have a really dear friend that had crossed away from cancer many years ago, and she had kids who were in her 30s. And I remember when she was going, how do I leave those children behind? How do I leave them behind? You know, it's
Mhm.
really difficult conversation. How do I go over there? And how am I going to know that they're
Oh.
going to be okay? Am I going to be able to communicate? How do I communicate? How did they communicate with me? You know, am I going to miss their weddings, birth of my grandchildren? And which I will say, it always happens is that before you have children here, any of your loved ones on the other side usually will show me with them or holding them. So it'll be like, you know, if your
Mm.
mom, I get this, if your mom was
Yeah.
over there before you had children, mom usually comes through and is like, oh, you're having this girl. And I know who
Wow.
she is. I know
Mhm.
her before you know her. But, you know,
Oh,
we
it's so
don't have those
beautiful. Mhm.
conversations. And nobody really knows
Mhm.
about that unless you're put in that position. And so that's one point. And then the other side of those of us who are here, how do we support you through the journey? Because over here, it's harder for us. You know, we're grieving, we're missing them. We don't have the physicalness of them. We don't hear the physical voice or the physical touch. So how can we communicate? How do we know that they're
Mm.
okay? You know, questions that you never got to ask your dad. I have a friend who jokes like, you know, questions I never got to ask dad when he was alive. You know, it's like how questions, you know, how do you have unresolved things? Or why I wish my dad was here, I would ask them this question. I did not get a chance to
Mm.
ask this
Mhm.
question.
Mhm.
So it starts
Mm.
with what you said in the beginning, communication. You're connected to them more than I am. Learning how to
Yeah.
communicate when you're here to, you know, whoever you want on the
Yes.
other
Yes.
side. And then also people are getting ready to cross over. So they don't have the anxiety or the fear of that, of, you know, what's it
Mhm.
going to be
Mhm.
like and so forth. So kind of ease
Yeah.
that. So kind of the both sides of the coin, but it's different
Mhm.
sides of it. So that's my goal.
It's really lovely too because we have been conditioned, many of us, by the religion that we grew up in. And I know
Yeah.
when my mom was crossing over, she had big questions and she wanted a priest to come to the house because she had
Yes.
practiced Catholicism for many years and she wanted to know if she was, I don't know if I'm going to get this exactly right, but going to go to heaven. And she was, I feel like there was fear there about an alternative. And so I feel maybe working with you and coming from this in a different perspective angle that someone almost many years later can define what they want it to look like too
Yeah.
in with their questions guiding them and their inner knowing and devoid of all that we learned earlier in our lives or even currently practice.
So true. It's funny that you said that because my mother-in-law, she's 86. We call her Bubbles. That's her nickname. And so I'm asking her these questions and she said the same thing. She said, I want the last rites
Mm,
because she grew up Catholic as well. That's something I didn't know. So if I hadn't talked about that topic, I would not have known her wishes. And, you know, we always want to
yeah.
respect anybody crossing over, whatever they want, whatever their wishes are. And she said the same thing. She says, well, what if they've been wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what do you mean wrong? She's like, well, what if I don't go to heaven? And I'm like, of course you're going to go to
Mm-hmm.
heaven. We would say the
Yeah.
things that we would say to our loved ones. You're good in your heart. She said this, but she literally puts her finger to, she was like, but I know what I think. And it's always my thoughts. Right? You don't know what I think, but I know what I think. And I
Mm-hmm.
laughed and I said, you know what? You're human, but at your
Yeah.
core, you're love,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to go to heaven. You're going to find it's going to be lovely. And
Yes.
I've had people who have their family member, unfortunately, have committed suicide. Now, that's a really hard topic. And that's one of the things
Mm-hmm.
that they want to know. Are you okay? Are you not going to be held because you took your own life? And
Yeah.
100% of the time, it has never been that they are not welcome back in love.
Wow.
So
Mm-hmm.
I just have to say,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what your religion is, that has never been my experience for you not to make it to heaven, that
Yeah.
you're going to be welcome back there. And
Hmm.
so I think that's an
And
important question
yeah.
to, answer to know.
I do too. And I think, Valerie, the process can be such a comforting one to be able to access a resource like yourself in this work that must feel very expansive to you. And do you
Mhm.
feel like on your own journey of the work that you do with people that this just has been something that it was coming to you more often and you saw people desiring support in the area and you just kind of followed the thread of, oh, maybe this is where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like I never know what's going to happen. I never know, who my
Mhm.
angels are going to bring to me. And so it's
Yeah.
so exciting. So it's like we were talking about following the threads of the synchronicities. So you're right. So when life or your guides or angels or love brings
Yeah.
someone or something into your awareness, and I get it. And if you get like for me, I got excited by that. I'm like, ooh, this is
Yeah.
exciting.
Mhm.
Nobody's really asked
Mhm.
such
Mhm.
like really great these deep rooted questions in one setting. So it's a thread or
Yes.
the synchronicity. So I followed it. That's what I've been doing my whole life. And it's so funny because my husband has a say, I'll say, I don't know why we need to do this or go here. I'm hearing it or I'm feeling it. And most people would be like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going there. Right? That's weird.
Yes.
We don't even know
Right.
why we're going here or doing this. Right? And I said, it was kind
Absolutely.
of weird, right? And, and I've been doing this for years. And he'll say to me, he goes, it works for us so far. And that's so true.
Mhm.
So when we
Mhm.
follow those
Mhm.
threads, it works for you because I always say they know what we don't know. I mean, we don't
Mhm.
know what we don't know. So, but they know. And so they try to put
Yes.
those threads or those synchronicities in our way. And if we're brave enough, courageous enough,
Yeah.
curious enough to kind
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
follow
Mhm.
that, I would say it's joyful. Then, you can't complain. You just
Oh,
follow. And so that's why I
I
want that for
I'm
everyone.
it's I love it too because I'm thinking about how messages are sometimes delivered to us too, and our messengers might come in the form of a person saying something to
Yeah.
us. And the reason I'm thinking of that is if when we cross over, if the other side, what we know about it, and we do know a lot about this from
Yeah.
channeled messages, but also near death
Mhm.
experiences. But
Yeah.
if it is like love and sort of heaven and our angels and guides are guiding us to live our own version of heaven on earth, then there's ambassadors or people who show up or messages that are drawing us more towards the light, drawing us to see our own light, because that
Yeah.
is why we're here too. I know we're here to like grow and,
Mhm.
have our experiences, but we're also here to know that we're light and love. And,
Yeah.
a few, like 6 weeks ago, I had Susie Pearl on and she talked about her near death experience. And basically,
Yeah.
it's the messages you're sharing today that come through that we are all being led towards love. And we can feel so much in our human self that we keep on having these roadblocks and the why. But if we lean into it, if we open to the messages, that we're also being guided towards the light and away from the resistance and fear. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And you know what? They do it in such big ways. You know, we've had those big
Mm-hmm.
ways that show us, that illuminate something for us, or this epiphany that is life changing. And then they can also do it in little ways to shine lights for us. So it's
Yeah.
crucial that
Mm-hmm.
we pay attention to how we're receiving through our body, and so that they
Yeah.
can show us that roadmap. And because we're human, let's face it, it's hard being human. It's hard. And so we're going to
Yeah.
have
Mm-hmm.
roadblocks. But if they can say, okay, you're going to have
Mm-hmm.
this roadblock here, and we know it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable or painful, we're going to go through it. And so,
Yeah.
but we're going to help you. Maybe you don't, maybe there's an easier way around it, or maybe we just go
Okay.
through it quickly, or we're going to be there to
Yeah.
support you, or a lot of times I'll get questions. Well, what do you think about so and so in my healing journey? This doctor, this
Mm-hmm.
therapist, and so forth. What is their energy? And they'll say, God, I have a feeling. I don't know why. I just heard about this one doctor. I don't know. Like, I just feel like, should I
Oh.
call that
Mm-hmm.
doctor?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but he's
Mm-hmm.
not like in the field that I'm looking for. And then you call that doctor and it's like, oh, he
Yeah.
was the perfect one for me. So if you wouldn't have been listening to that, they're like, okay, we know you have this roadblock, but we're going to help you navigate it to get those
Yeah.
people in those places and right in
Ooh,
front
I
of you
like
to
that.
help
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I love that. That's why I tell everybody should do this. They don't have to do it like for professionally like I do, but they
Right.
absolutely need to make a connection to their higher self and their guides for listening. They're just there to
Yes.
help
Yes.
us.
And I think that's why I know, because I have friends who go to see you, and anytime they do, you walk away feeling lighter. And that's kind of how you were saying with the energy blending. But two
Yeah.
things that I'm thinking about are, it's a process of coming home to ourself, whether,
Mhm.
and the
Yeah.
more we practice that coming home to ourself when we're living here in our bodies, the more we can attend to all these the beauty around us coming through in the channels we've talked about today. And then when we're crossing over, I think that you call that also a coming home, and
It
that's
is a
the
coming
ultimate
home.
coming home. So in parallel processes, we're doing them in both planes.
Well said. I think that's beautiful. I think while we're here, we view this as our home. And so our angels
Hmm.
and our guides are trying to make this as homey as possible as you
Oh,
navigate it.
yes.
And then when you
Yes.
go home, you always hear that when I hear a lot of time from the other side when I go home, you were birthed here on earth and you think it's your birthday. But when I cross over, I view that as my
Yeah.
rebirth because that is my home
Mm,
and it's coming home there.
hmm.
So it's different and you're supported over there, but just in a different way, obviously. So well
Yeah.
said, Maureen.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Oh, well, we are being guided today. I know that.
Yeah.
So, I was going to say, to leave with the listener too, when you start to notice different synchronicities coming into your world, like today's episode that was live was Dr. Marcy Cole. We had so many synchronicities, and yet she was sort of a random individual whom I had seen an article she had written, and I pursued her. I think it's probably because we share an energy, but in the interview, there must have been 3 or 4 parallels in our lives. Or my daughter just is living in New York City this summer, and the room she moved into was filled with spiritual books. Oh, oh, here you go, on a silver platter. Or her,
Exactly.
her and her roommate is, put it this way, a friend of a friend. And what was coming to mind for me is when we start to kind of get wide-eyed and in wonder about these things, and they come to us and we say, huh. And our old selves may have said, that's weird, but maybe our new self says, what if, and just opened up this whole field of curiosity.
Exactly. So, I started off with, that's weird. And every now and again, I will be like, that's so weird, even for me, right? So now what you say is, what is that? What is that for me? Why am I being given that? Why am I put in
So
this
good.
apartment and I'm seeing all these books. Obviously, there's a book here that I need to read, probably more than one, or maybe I need to check into it. So for me, I take the next step. And I think the next step would be for anyone who's already done wow, that's weird, and they want to take it the next step. The next step would be get curious and to say, well, why is that happening? Why am I here? Why did I need to go here? I just want to share a really quick story because I always tell my clients to pay attention and even to their thoughts. And one of my clients emailed me and she said, I was going to go pick up the kids, go to the grocery store because the kids were at school. And I kept getting this random thought, go to Target. She's like, I don't need to go to Target. I got to go to the grocery store. I got an hour. That's it. You know how your mind thinks. And then she had it twice. And she's like, well, that's weird. That's weird. But why am I having repetitive? And because I was saying, be mindful of the repeating things. So she literally goes, I'm curious. So she says, why do I need to go to Target? I don't know, but I need to go there to find out why. So that's what I would have done. I don't know in the moment, but I'm curious why. So she did go to Target. Yeah. She pulls into the parking lot. She's like, I don't even know why I'm going to be in Target. Gets out of her car. She doesn't even make it into Target. She meets an old neighbor in the parking lot at the exact same moment that she's there. And she's like, that is why. So after you get that's weird, and you get past that, ask, well, why? And sometimes there may be an action as to why did I need to go to Target? Well, you shouldn't know. But they're like, go so you can find out your why. And she found out her why.
I love that. I love that. Yes. And just paying attention all the time to what's coming to us. And a really cute and unexpected thing was, for the listener who doesn't know, there's a private Facebook page for Mystical Sisterhood. So if you want to join that, just look up Mystical Sisterhood. But a woman named Steph Radke, she was on an earlier podcast and about music, sound, and movement. She does sound healing. But it was cute because I made a post about synchronicities. This was like a year ago. and I said something like, this is crazy, and she said, actually, expect it more than not expecting it because it is so common. And the way she conveyed that, I was like, that's absolutely right. And ever since, that's the way I look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it turned it around for me. So
I love
it's
that.
perfect. Me too. So Valerie, as we finish up, just in terms of your message, is there anything else that I didn't include that you wanted to add?
No, I think you covered it. I think the basic is be your authentic self. So make your own authentic connection to yourself and your angels and guides to support you. And loved ones. Like, life is all around us, even if it's not tangible, and so connect with that. They're just there to help us in every way. So learn how to communicate in your own personal way. You will not regret it. It'll be magical.
And so if someone wants to work on that with you, how do they reach you?
They can go to my website at valerie-wood.com. So
okay,
or on Instagram. I'm doing a series on Instagram. It's called Notes from Loved Ones. So that's Valerie Wood Intuitive. So once a week, I post a message that someone has said on the other side to a loved one. So it's going to help support them.
I look forward to those. Yeah. So beautiful.
Thank you, Maureen.
Well, thank you for being here. Yeah. And thanks to the listener for being here with Valerie and I today. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mystical Sisterhood. To learn more about my one-on-one coaching programs or join the Mystical Sisterhood membership, visit MaureenSpielman.com or MysticalSisterhood.com. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next episode.